this, I'm done.
I'm done! Everyone loved working with her.
What happens when a beloved music legend sits down for what should be a friendly morning chat, only to face an interviewer determined to destroy his reputation on live television? In just 37 seconds, one shocking comment would turn a routine interview into the most explosive moment in daytime TV history, leaving viewers stunned and one host facing the biggest backlash of her career. The morning started like any other at the ITV studios. Cliff Richard, the legendary singer with over 60 years in the music business, had arrived early for his scheduled appearance on Lorraine. He was there to promote his new album, a collection of classic covers that showcased his enduring voice. At 78 years old, Cliff remained one of Britain's most cherished entertainers, known not just for his music, but for his genuine warmth and professionalism. Behind the scenes, Cliff was his usual charming self, chatting with crew members and makeup artists who had worked with him countless times before. Everyone loved working with Cliff Richard. He remembered names, asked about families, and never acted like the superstar he truly was. The production team was looking forward to what they expected would be a delightful, uplifting segment to brighten viewers' mornings. Lorraine Kelly, however, seemed different that morning. Several crew members noticed her sharp tone during rehearsals, her impatience with the technical team, and an unusual edge in her voice. Perhaps she was having a bad morning, or maybe the pressure of maintaining her position in the competitive world of daytime television was getting to her. Whatever the reason, there was a tension in the air that made everyone uncomfortable. As the cameras prepared to roll, Cliff sat in the guest chair, relaxed and ready to share stories about his career and new music. He had done thousands of interviews over the decades, from small radio stations to major international broadcasts. This was supposed to be easy, a friendly chat with someone he had known professionally for years. Lorraine took her position across from him, shuffling through her notes with an intensity that seemed unnecessary for such a straightforward interview. The floor manager began the countdown, and within moments, they were live to millions of viewers across the country. Good morning and welcome back to the show. I'm joined now by music legend Cliff Richard, who has a brand new album out. Lorraine's opening was standard, professional, exactly what viewers expected. Cliff smiled warmly, ready to discuss his passion for music. Thank you for having me, Lorraine. It's always a pleasure to be here, Cliff replied, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had endeared him to generations of fans. Now, Cliff, this new album of yours, it's all covers, isn't it? Not exactly pushing any boundaries, are we? The first hint of something sharp in Lorraine's tone caught Cliff slightly off guard, but he maintained his composure. Well, I think there's real artistry and interpretation, Lorraine. These are songs that have meant something to people for decades, and I wanted to bring my own perspective to them. Sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is honor something classic. Lorraine leaned back in her chair, a slight smirk crossing her face. Right, but some might say it's a bit safe, isn't it? Playing it safe when perhaps you should be taking risks at this stage of your career? The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Cliff's smile remained, but those watching closely could see a flicker of confusion in his eyes. This wasn't the tone he had expected from a morning chat show. I've never been one to shy away from risks, Lorraine. I've experimented with different styles throughout my career, from rock and roll to gospel, pop to musical theater. This album is about celebrating the songs that have shaped music history. But surely, Cliff, at your age, wouldn't it be more honest to admit that you're just playing the nostalgia card? Cashing in on people's memories rather than creating something new? The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the warm, welcoming atmosphere they had expected from a Lorraine Kelly interview. Cliff's professionalism remained intact, but his voice carried a slight edge when he responded. I think music is timeless, Lorraine. Whether I'm 78 or 28, good music speaks to people. I'm not cashing in on anything. I'm sharing music I love with people who appreciate it. Lorraine's eyes narrowed slightly. She glanced down at her notes, then back up at Cliff with an expression that seemed almost predatory. Speaking of your age, Cliff, don't you think it's time to perhaps step aside and let younger artists have the spotlight? Surely you've had your time. The question hit like a slap. The studio audience fell completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed shocked by the directness and rudeness of the comment. Cliff Richard, a man who had always conducted himself with grace and dignity, sat frozen for a moment, clearly struggling to process what he had just heard. I beg your pardon? Cliff's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was steel beneath it now. Well, you've been in the business for, 60 years? Surely that's enough for one person? Wouldn't it be more graceful to bow out and give someone else a chance? The temperature in the studio seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cliff Richard straightened in his chair, his legendary composure beginning to crack under the weight of such an unprofessional and personally insulting line of questioning. Lorraine, I came here today to talk about music, to share something positive with your viewers. I'm not sure why you feel the need to attack me personally, but this isn't what I signed up for. But Lorraine wasn't finished. If anything, Cliff's obvious discomfort seemed to embolden her. She leaned forward, her voice taking on an even sharper edge. Oh, come now, Cliff. Surely you can handle a few honest questions. Or has success made you too sensitive for real journalism? The insult landed with devastating effect. Cliff Richard, a man who had faced down decades of both praise and criticism, who had handled everything from teenage screaming fans to serious music critics, found himself under attack from someone who was supposed to be interviewing him about his art. Real journalism? Cliff's voice rose slightly, the first crack in his legendary calm. This isn't journalism, Lorraine. This is you being deliberately cruel for no reason I can understand. The studio audience began to murmur, clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a respected elder statesman of British music being humiliated on live television by someone who seemed to be enjoying every moment of his discomfort. Lorraine smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. Getting a bit worked up, aren't we, Cliff? Maybe that's the problem with your generation. You can't handle honest conversation anymore. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable now. What had started as a routine morning interview had transformed into something ugly. Something that made everyone in the studio feel deeply uncomfortable. The camera operators exchanged worried glances. The floor manager looked toward the control room, clearly wondering if someone should intervene. Cliff Richard took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain his composure. For a moment, it seemed like his decades of professionalism might win out, that he might find a way to salvage this disaster of an interview. Lorraine, I've been doing interviews since before you were born. I've handled difficult questions, challenging topics, and yes, even hostile interviewers. But what you're doing right now isn't interviewing. It's just being mean-spirited. Mean-spirited? Lorraine laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm asking the questions that everyone else is too polite to ask. Maybe that makes me the only honest person in this room. Honest about what exactly? Cliff's voice was getting stronger now, his legendary politeness finally beginning to crack under the sustained assault. What exactly are you being honest about? That you think I should disappear because I'm old? That you think my music doesn't matter anymore? What's your point here, Lorraine? The studio audience was completely silent now. This wasn't the feel-good morning television they had come to see. This was watching a man's dignity being attacked for sport, and everyone could feel how wrong it was. Lorraine shifted in her chair, and for a split second, something flickered across her face. Maybe a moment of doubt, a recognition that she had gone too far. But instead of pulling back, she doubled down. My point, Cliff, is that maybe it's time for some honesty in this business. Maybe it's time to stop pretending that hanging on forever is somehow admirable. Maybe it's time to admit that there comes a point when graceful retirement is better than desperate attempts to stay relevant. The words hit like physical blows. Cliff Richard, who had spent his entire career being nothing but gracious and professional, who had never badmouthed another performer or created scandal, sat in stunned silence for several seconds. Desperate attempts? His voice was barely above a whisper, but the microphones caught every word. Is that what you think this is? Desperation? Well, what would you call it? You're nearly 80 years old, Cliff. Don't you think it's a bit sad, still trying to compete with artists a third of your age? The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Here was a woman attacking someone not for anything he had done wrong, not for any scandal or controversy, but simply for having the audacity to continue doing what he loved at an advanced age. Cliff Richard stood up slowly from his chair. The movement was deliberate, controlled, but everyone in the studio could see that something fundamental had shifted. I think we're done here, Lorraine. His voice was quiet, but carried absolute authority. This wasn't the confused, hurt man who had been sitting there moments before. This was someone who had found his limit and wasn't going to tolerate being pushed past it. Oh, running away now, are we? Lorraine's voice had a mocking edge that made several audience members visibly wince. Can't handle a real conversation? Cliff turned to face her directly, and his eyes were blazing now. Real conversation? You call this real conversation? Lorraine, I've had real conversations with journalists all over the world. I've discussed my music, my faith, my life, my mistakes, my successes. That's real conversation. What you're doing is just playground bullying with cameras rolling. Bullying? Lorraine's voice rose in mock surprise. I'm asking legitimate questions about your career choices. No, you're not. Cliff's voice was getting stronger with each word. You haven't asked me a single legitimate question